So I'm an associate professor here in the marketing department, and I teach classes related to marketing topics on anything from experimental design at the PhD level to the marketing management capstone course at the undergraduate level, and pretty much everything in between, online, offline, hybrid. I've probably taught it at some level and at some format. So basically, my research is on consumer behavior, which takes a look at the reasons why consumers respond to different marketing campaigns the way they do. I'm in charge of running our behavioral lab here in the college, and that's a good source of research data for us as we try and figure out how exactly people respond to these different campaigns.
So, when it comes to this year's Black Friday, what trends have you begun to notice ahead of the big day?
Yeah, so the predictions from the National Retail Federation, which is kind of the main source for what people look at, suggests that there's going to be an increase in overall revenues this year, and some projections are putting that up as high as $1 trillion. But what we're finding is that the average spend per person is actually going to be a little bit lower, at least what they're planning on spending. And what we're seeing is a lot of people are very concerned about the price raises that we've seen over the last year or so, largely due to things like inflation and the tariffs that have come on certain products. So we also have kind of a divergence depending on where you are in the income level. And the people that are pretty well off are spending very well, spending on travel, spending on gifts, expecting to spend more than they did last year. But the people in the middle to lower tier income brackets are expecting to spend less and planning on spending less because they have a lot more negative view of what's going on in the economy. We've got kind of what we call a two-tier economy or K-shaped economy right now, which means the people that are in those higher level incomes don't have as many concerns. So as a consumer, they feel more relaxed about spending freely, whereas the people in the middle and lower incomes are more worried about the future of the economy and not feeling as good about it.
And aside from the tariffs and the economic uncertainty that you mentioned, what have you noticed that has been different compared to previous years this year?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the trends that we've seen continuing is the earlier and earlier start to Black Friday. I mean, there's even companies now that have Black Friday in July. And the idea is to get people kind of excited about this official start to the holiday season and basically give them a reason to purchase at all times of the year. And what it's trying to do, I think, by starting earlier is get people to maybe spread out their spending a little bit more, which might be good for the consumer as well as for the retailer because it may actually make the aggregate of all they spend bigger over a longer period of time. Another thing that we've seen is the advent of artificial intelligence being used, and this is used both on the consumer side and on the retailer side. The numbers from last year suggest that there was a small but significant bump in the amount of people purchasing if AI was used in their online interactions. And we've actually seen evidence that certain consumer groups, particularly those in the younger demographics, are starting to use AI as a tool to find the best price, which is important to them, particularly in the younger, like Generation Z type consumers who are concerned about their spending this year.
Yeah, I remember when it used to be just one day and it was just pure chaos the whole
Yeah.
time, everybody fighting to get everything. Is there a certain point where that sort of shifted and became this more spread out thing?
Well, it was, yeah. I mean, back in the early 2000s, early mid 2000s, they came out with Cyber Monday, which is kind of the end of what we often call Cyber Week now. And it's really the more online focused shopping day. Although, ironically, there's more shoppers, at least there were last year, online on Black Friday than there are on Cyber Monday, but they didn't spend quite as much online on Black Friday as they do on Cyber Monday. So what that suggests is that there's a difference in what they're buying as well. Cyber Monday tends to trend towards more electronics and bigger ticket items, whereas Black Friday might be a mix of many different products, and not all of them are as high a price. We've also seen that during the pandemic, people wanted more of what they call an omni-channel experience. So they want to have a better integration between online sales and offline sales, so that you might have somebody shopping online, getting some basic information about products, checking prices maybe at a couple different locations, and then making a decision to purchase the product at one retailer, purchasing it online, and then going to pick it up either curbside or going into the store to buy it. And they hope that if you do that, then maybe you'll stop by and buy a few other things while you're there as well.
And there have been some things on social media that try to claim that companies don't actually have these huge sales. Like they usually try to mark them up around the holidays and then show a sale price as if you're getting a deal. Is there any credibility to any of these claims?
Well, there actually probably is. Obviously, there's legal restrictions for what they can and can't do. But a lot of times, what you'll do as a retailer is give people what we call a reference price, and an advertised reference price specifically is what you're telling them the product originally sold for or was sold for at some point. And one of the games that you might play is saying that this product was, $500 and now is 250. And that might be true. Maybe when it very first came out, and maybe that's 2 years ago, it was $500. But if you look at the price trajectory over those 2 years that it's been available, maybe the last 6 months or so, it's retailed for 270. So now you get it for 250, which is still better than 270, but not nearly as big a discount as you would see if it was really 50% off. And so what I recommend is that when you're searching for these products, you have some idea of what the real price was over the not too distant past. So keep an eye on particularly big ticket items for the last few months and see what they normally sell at. What retailers are capitalizing on is this idea that the average, or excuse me, the advertised reference price actually gives people a belief and anchors them at a high level of price. And then anything below that they think is a deal, and they think creates value. And that works very effectively if people don't know what the product normally sells for. And sometimes the sales are not really very good sales. So being an educated consumer can help you really know whether you're getting a good deal or not.
And do you personally have any tips or advice or any like Black Friday hacks for shoppers this year?
Well, I like to think of myself as pretty frugal and kind of a penny pincher, but I think, there's a number of things to keep in mind. Number one, know what your finances are. Don't overextend, because that can be really financially damaging. The other thing is be very in tune with what your needs are. If we look at these earplugs that I have in right now, for example, I love them. They were about $20, probably less actually. I think they might have been $10, and they function great for everything I need in terms of sound quality, in terms of staying in my ear. I think they're fantastic. Now, other people have name brand earbuds that probably cost 10 times that. And for them, that might be perfect. That might be exactly what they want, might have better sound quality, might have other features that mine don't. But I don't feel that I need to spend that extra money because the extra benefits that those products bring are not actually benefits for me. And in fact, some of the things that they bring are drawbacks to me. So be very clear with what you want as a consumer and look for products that deliver that, and know that that doesn't always mean that you have to buy the name brand to get a good price. You can find non-name brands or lower tier models that are much cheaper that may not have all the high-end features, but if you're not going to use those features anyway, then you're paying for stuff you won't use. The other thing is do your research. Know what you're trying to buy, know the specific categories, and know what the average prices are that things are actually sold for, so you know if you're getting a good deal or not. And also look for specialized sites that carry the types of products you're looking for. Another good tip might be to look at some of the lower priced outlets, things like TJ Maxx or Marshalls or Ross or Burlington or Ollie's Bargain Outlet. All these tend to have a little bit more of a fluid set of products that flow through their stores. But if you find what you like, it can oftentimes come at a much lower price than if you're buying them at a full price store.
And I know we talked about it a little bit earlier with the economic impact and forecasts. Is there any other factors that you see affecting the economy when it comes to shopping?
Well, I look at it mainly from the standpoint of kind of the other way around, how the economy is going to affect consumers. But one of the ways that that's happening right now is if you look at the number of people who feel the economy is going well, there have been a couple of polls within the last week or so that came out from CBS and Fox News, and they both show that somewhere between two-thirds and three-quarters of Americans are feeling that the economy is not really doing so great right now. And this goes back to the idea that you have people in those higher income brackets, which number fewer, that think it's going great, and the remaining people in the middle and lower tier income brackets feel it's not going so well. And so what we're also seeing in the early predictions and early numbers is that the prediction of the increase in overall spending is largely being driven by the higher income consumers, and their average spend is what's bringing the overall average up. But if you look at the individual level in those middle and lower tier consumers, they're planning on spending a lot less. And particularly, again, within Generation Z, they're kind of the extreme where they're reporting spending nearly 23% less on average than they did over the last few years. Now, what that translates to for retailers is the particular type of retailer can gain an advantage or a disadvantage based on who they're serving. One of the things that you typically see is when people become concerned about the economy, people are going to start trading down to lower priced outlets. So companies like Walmart can do particularly well as people start to trade down to lower tier outlets and or lower price tier outlets, excuse me. And they've reported fairly good earnings so far and fairly good outlook for the coming shopping season. Now you contrast that with Target, and Target saying, well, we're finding that we're not really hitting our target market very well right now, and that might be largely due to the economic concerns. Another interesting thing that you're seeing is we're starting to see online retailers that are discount like Temu.com starting to creep up in the planning for where people are going to shop this year. And they've been there before, but the numbers are getting larger. And that's probably also indicative of people's concerns about these raising prices or rising prices.
And is there any resources or more information that people can go see for themselves to learn more?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the best outlets is go to the National Retail Federation's website, and they've got a bunch of reports there that break it down in a number of different ways. And really, just based on that report, you can Google things from there that you find interesting and find some decent articles on, virtually from consulting groups up to news outlets. And there have been some good recent articles in the last couple of days talking about specific things that retailers are trying to do, and those can be very accessible to people even without a business background.
And is there anything that we didn't cover today that you wanted to highlight or talk more on?
No, I think just re-stressing that point that I had for people to know if you're getting a good deal or not, you really need to know what the normal pricing parameters are. So anytime you're going out to purchase something, particularly if it's a large purchase, do your homework and know what you can expect to pay normally for a product, and that'll help you determine whether you're getting a good deal or not.